congratulate PGPF for showing that video clip just now. You can see the horrible things that has been done to the Rohingyas in Myanmar. Look at the mutilated body. Look at the way children were being killed. Their sufferings must have been terrible. And yet, this is happening in our age, when we pride ourselves over our concern for human rights. We do nothing. The world does nothing. The United Nations does nothing. The very civilized people of the world who live in peace and prosperity will do nothing. We should be able to stop this, but we are not. We have a great deal of respect for laws and policies. The ASEAN countries have decided that we should not interfere in the internal affairs of our member nations. We know, for example, that for a long time, the Pol Pot regime in Cambodia slaughtered 2 million people. And today you see evidence of that in the number of skulls that have been collected in the museum devoted to this terrible event. What did ASEAN do at that time? Well, we said it's not our business. It is an internal affair of Cambodia. And therefore we stood by and do nothing. And now it is happening in Myanmar. The first thing that Myanmar did when it became independent was to expel the Indian people from Myanmar. They were all chased out. It was not a genocide because the Indians were quite capable of looking after themselves. They were able to migrate to the UK, for example, where they are doing quite well. Indonesia had a lot of Chinese people of Chinese origin in Indonesia. They were not expelled. It's the same with Thailand. It's the same with the Philippines. Countries which became independent should not treat their residents simply that way simply because they are not ethnic. They are not original people, or what we call in Malay, Bumi Putras, sons of the soil. In Malaysia, 36% of the people were people who came largely during the time when we were under British rule. When we became independent, they were not expelled. In fact, the law forbids us from expelling anybody. And so they stay here and they make up the citizens of this country. There may be complaints that perhaps they were not treated as equal to the indigenous people, but that is because there is a need to equalize the economic situation of the peoples of Malaysia. In Indonesia, 5% of these 240 million people in Indonesia are of Chinese origin. They were not expelled. In fact, they're doing quite well. It's the same in the Philippines, where people of Chinese origin have actually become presidents of the Philippines. But somehow, Myanmar does not believe in giving rights to people who have settled in their country for 800 years. But the British, for the purpose of ease of administration, included many areas which were not actually a part of Burma. And so when Burma became independent, it became independent as a larger state with people of many different ethnic origins included in Burma. It's not a boat problem. It's a problem which we must admit is a problem created by Myanmar by expelling these people. And therefore, this idea that we should not interfere in the internal affairs of nations should have a limitation. Up to a point, yes, we should not interfere in their politics and try to campaign them as is being done now. We know that in many countries, political parties receive support from big powers, for example, who wanted to achieve regime change. They do interfere in the internal affairs of the country, but there should be a limit to what would constitute internal affairs that are beyond criticism by neighbors or by other countries. Killing people as they are doing in Myanmar today is not something that we should tolerate. I was the one who persuaded the ASEAN countries to accept Myanmar as one of its members, despite the treatment of Aung San Suu Kyi. But the behavior of Myanmar today is not acceptable to anybody who claims to be he is human. I think it is time that we demand that ASEAN discard this idea of non-interference in the affairs of internal affairs of member countries. Malaysia should take this up with the ASEAN countries. To me, action must be taken against Myanmar, even if it means Myanmar objects to using the word Rohingya, or objects to interference in what it calls its internal affairs. We should still take action against Myanmar, because its internal affairs has now become an international affair. The beginning is in Myanmar, and Myanmar must be told to stop this. ASEAN must tell Myanmar to stop this. Or if it wants to leave ASEAN, I think it's better if Myanmar is not a member of ASEAN. We cannot have a country that practices genocide openly, that kills people, its own people, like that, and refuse to accept that these are people who have been living there for centuries. If you want to commit genocide, then leave ASEAN altogether. The idea that we should not interfere in the internal affairs should be set aside. This is not the ordinary internal affairs of nation. I'm sorry to say I wrote a letter to Aung San Suu Kyi and asked her, please, to stop this thing. I received no reply. I don't believe we are civilized yet, which is why we are struggling to make war a crime. People seem to think that killing people is justified because it is called war, but it is still killing people. And killing people is murder, and murder is a crime. So I hope that by having this conference here today, there will be real results, in the sense that it will take steps to put a stop to the brutal treatment of the Rohingyas in Myanmar. I thank you.